I'm asking you, I'm begging you to do a rational cost-benefit analysis about how you are living inside yourself. Don't call it spiritual, call it rational. It's just a rational thing to do. You do it with the food. You look at your food before you eat it and you see if it's going to make you sick. You may like it, so you eat a little bit, but you do make rational decisions. You don't make any rational decisions about your thoughts. 99.9% of human beings who walk this earth make no rational decision about their thoughts. They just let them be where they are. They like something, they say, oh, I like it. Okay, I like it. We didn't even know where that came from. Where did that thought come from? And so you start working with yourself. I call this working with yourself. It's a beautiful thing to do. You do it every moment of your life, especially when things are disturbing you. It's not about the big things. It's about the little things. Because we end up being disturbed all the time by a mosquito. It's too hot out. It's raining when I don't want it to be. This, that, all kinds of stuff. And so instead, you start working to train yourself to be more happy, to be more positive, to be able to handle the events that are taking place in life. If you will let these things pass through you, they will pass through you. I say this all the time, but I mean it. There is no super glue in there. If stuff is stuck inside of you, you did it. Listen to me. There's nothing inside. It's just empty. It's just energy. It's just pure energy. So if an event comes in, it passes right through. You learn from it. You experience it. You become a greater being because you experienced it, but it will not stay in there. I assure you. I've done this journey for 45 years. I've watched it very carefully. Nothing will stay in there. Nothing. No matter how bad it is, no matter how disturbing it is, this stuff's going to come in. You don't stand in front of it. You don't try to stop it. You don't try to control it or rationalize it or do anything. You just let it go. Let it go. Let it blow across your face like wind. And eventually it's like, oh, this is exciting. You can have as much fun as you want with life. So that's a second technique. A second technique is, the first one is try to be positive, work with affirmation, work with positive thinking. That's fine. All right? Your second, one step deeper, is just because your mind is saying something doesn't mean you have to listen. Just because it's in there saying, why are you driving like that? I don't like you should be driving safe. I got to get there. Right? I don't have to listen to that. I can put my attention on my breath. Your consciousness is where you live. If you put your attention on something other than the neurotic mind, you're going to find out it quiets down. If you don't listen to it, it will quiet down. Yukteswar said, an ignored guest quickly leaves. All right? So that's a second technique. A third technique, which happens to be the highest, but you need to work your way to it, is to notice, there it goes again. There is the disturbed mind being disturbed. Relax. What do you mean it won't relax? I didn't tell it to relax. I told you to relax. You are in there noticing the mind being disturbed. How do you know the mind's disturbed? How do you know the mind's complaining about the person in front of you? Because I'm in here and I notice it. Relax back into where you notice from. Did you hear that? That's what it means to meditate on the self. Relax back to where you notice from, as opposed to relaxing into what you're noticing. That is the highest technique you will ever use. When you learn that no matter what's going on in front of you, you don't have to pay attention to it. You can just relax and release. At that point, what you've done is given plenty of room for it to pass through. You are the one who's in the way. You're in the way. You take away the block that your will is creating, that your resistance is creating, it will pass right through. Take down the Hoover Dam and the Colorado River will go exactly back to the way it was however long ago they built the Hoover Dam. Get out of the way, because you're the dam. Get out of the way. Do not resist. Relax and release. That's the highest thing. Relax and release, and the energies will pass right through you, and they will not leave a single scar. They'll just be there when they're there, and then they'll be gone when they're not. All right? So this is your technique. I call it working with yourself, because you are working with yourself. Instead of manipulating, controlling the world around you to try to make it fit your messed up self, you're letting go of yourself. Then ultimately what will happen, and it's a very natural process, is as you let go of the everyday things that are happening now, the old stuff will start to come up. Why? Because you didn't shove new stuff down on top of it. All right? It will release naturally. It'll come up in your sleep. It'll come up while you're just minding your own business. You were doing well, and all of a sudden this stuff's coming up. Good. That is what is supposed to happen. It's called purification. If that stuff is in there It's either going to stay down there and run your life from underneath, or you're going to be willing to let it go. And you want it to come up, and you want to let it go. Now that sounds scary, because you know there are things in there you just soon never see again. All right? That's why they've been shoved down there so far. Because you practiced with these everyday things, the car in front of you, the fact that it rained when you didn't want it to, they seem like trivial things. They're not. They're just like, you know, when you learn to play the piano, they don't give you Beethoven. They give you scales. Oh, scales. Yes. But what do scales have to do with being able to play Beethoven? Everything. As you learn to play your scales, you're getting the basics down about how to move your fingers, about timing, about all kinds of stuff. It is exactly the same with this. As you learn to let go that somebody didn't say hello, or somebody didn't act the way you wanted them to, or the car in front of you was a problem, or it rained when you didn't want it to, those are your scales. I want you to look at those scales. Nothing is small enough to not be worth letting go of. Not big enough, small enough. The slightest thing that happens, if you feel resistance, learn how to relax behind the resistance and let it go. Because you learned your scales, now you can play some. So because you learned these basic techniques of relaxing and releasing and surrendering and letting go, now a bigger thing will come up. What do I do? The same thing. But I don't know how to. Of course you don't know how to. You haven't done it with something bigger yet. You didn't know how to play Beethoven just because you go with your scales, but now we're ready to try something. And so you'll flub around a little bit, but you'll be able to do it because you got the basics down. So when this thing comes up, do the same thing, relax and release. You welcome it. That's the highest thing I can teach you. You are to welcome the disturbances that come up inside of you. Why? Because the alternative is to keep them. Remember, we started, you don't want them in there. You don't want them. You want beauty in there. You want love in there. You want enthusiasm, excitement, passion, inspiration, don't you? Well, you can't have it when you got the other stuff in there. It's already tank's full. Tank's full of poison. So you have to be willing to let it go. And so you change your attitude about stuff, all right? So what happens, it starts to come up. You relax and release behind it. And a couple of big ones will come up, and you'll get good at it. And that's all it takes. Because what will happen at some point, you will let go enough to where not only is it not a negative that stuff's in there, but all the energy you used to use to keep it down, to fight with it, to control the world so it didn't hit it, is now liberated. You literally freed that energy, and it will start going up. And I'm telling you, it will go up. And you will start to feel these waves of love, of joy, of Shakti, of Chi flowing up inside of you, literally flowing up. It's not a figurative statement. It is an upward rush, rushing through your being. And it lifts your heart. It lifts your heart like when you fell in love, but there's nobody there. It's just something inside of you, raising you, lifting you. You find yourself smiling all the time. So basically your whole life changes. You will find that you get smarter than you used to be. You can remember things better. You can do more calculations in your head. You will find that you get inspired and have intuition, intuitive inspirations that happen. It's just your whole life changes because all that energy you were using to fight with the negative stuff, to keep the negative stuff and then fight with everything about it, is liberated to be able to come up. And when it starts coming up, your whole life changes. All the chakras open. All the beauty of what you think of as spirituality you try to make happen, happens naturally, literally. Every single center of energy will open. You will feel it open, and you will feel how the energy flows through them until eventually all of it just flows up and fill you with joy and love and ecstasy, all while you're working, while you're doing anything. Just like, hey, you can be depressed while you're working, can't you? You can get down while you're working. You can be negative while you're working. Why can't you be positive while you're working? Why can't it be a beautiful, positive experience? So this is what it means to walk the spiritual path. If meditation helps, and it does, meditate. If mantra helps, and it does, do mantra. If positive thinking helps, and it does, do positive thinking. Whatever technique, yoga, whatever it is, find things that work for you to help you work with yourself. But the important thing is, do you understand that you don't want that stuff inside of you that you stored inside of you? And then try to compensate with it with the rest of your life. And you commit yourself every day to let go of a piece. Every day when you wake up in the morning, before you do your practices, you remember what I said. You sit there and say, there's going to be less of me when I go to bed tonight. I don't know how much less, but there will be less. I am not putting more in, and if some comes up, I'm letting it go. And if every night when you go to bed, you check it out, don't worry about what you did, don't review everything and judge yourself. Just sit there and say, did I let some go? Did I do my best letting some of this stuff go? and then sleep well and get up and you get another day. And every single day do that. And then you come back and you tell me what happens. Because I know people that meditate 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day for years and do not have the growth that takes place if you do this. You know what happens when you meditate? They say you did your practices. That's why they're called practice. They're preparing you for the real work, which is letting go of yourself. Christ said what? You must die to be reborn. You will find that the essence of all spiritual teachings is what we just talked about. That's what it means to die to be reborn. You are willing to let go of your personal self so that you can rise up and ascend to the beauty that's inside of you. You work with these things. Jagrata.